If you'd been reading this series like you absolutely should be, then you'd already know the answer to the title of this video. But for those who haven't quite given Kagurabachi a chance yet, because maybe you were waiting to see if this manga would stand the test of time, then I am here to provide all the necessary info that will hopefully, finally, make you start your Kagurabachi journey. Now, in my last video on this manga, the story was nearing the end of its third arc, and Chihiro, along with the two legendary swordbearers from the Seate War, Samura and Yoji, were fighting against the invasion of the Hishaku. Since then, the story has essentially been flipped on its head, and crazy reveal after crazier reveal has taken place. But before I continue any further with the actual story, I think a better place to start would be with the mangaka's artistic ability. Because aside from the story and characters, the single most important thing when it comes to a manga is the layout and the art. And inherent bias aside, since I'm basically a mega fan at this point, genuinely, Takeru Hokuzono continues to have some of the best paneling and artwork I've seen in modern Shonen Jump. The way he handles perspective and shows off his talent and ability with extreme confidence is just something I can't help but admire, especially after learning that the guy's only about 24 years old. One of the more recent examples of his prowess was in chapter 67, where Chihiro during an action scene is drawn with a fisheye perspective, and it is just incredible to look at. Detail isn't sacrificed in any regard, in fact no expense is spared, making the final product a masterpiece. However, while I may find the way he crafts and delivers his manga art to be amazing, it is important to note that Hokuzono employs a somewhat controversial strategy for his drawing when it comes to Kagurabachi. In order to deal with the very strenuous scheduling at Jump, he has started reusing previously drawn art for subsequent chapters to lighten his workload. Personally, I don't have a problem with this technique being used, because for one, many in a similar position have unfortunately found their way to the hospital due to the mountain of work that this job calls for. For two, it's not like he uses it for literally every chapter. It'll just pop up here and there every now and then. And for three, the practice isn't something new. One of the many artists for the popular Invincible comic also used this strategy, and that comic is a great read, so yeah, I don't have a problem with him reusing previously drawn art here and there, but I figured that since I've seen some discourse about it, it'd be important to mention for this video. What some may consider slight negatives aside though, one area of Kagurabachi that has been absolutely flawless in my opinion is the story. Now for this particular section, there will be some major spoilers discussed. I won't be going through everything that's been revealed and written. However, some of the major plot points I feel have to be delved into to truly understand why I continue to hold this series in such high esteem and recommend it so vehemently. I'll only be going over a few, but these few are so impactful to the world of Kagurabachi that they fundamentally change the entire way that the story progresses, as well as how it's perceived within the world. The first major plot point takes place almost immediately after where I last covered the story in my previous video. As mentioned prior, Chihiro, Samura, and Yoji are fighting against the main antagonists of the series, the Hishaku. And in one of the most intense and well-written fights in the entire manga, Chihiro defeats Hirohiko in a battle of wits and skill. At the same time, Samura and Yoji are able to successfully push back the assault from the other members with the help of the use of Samura's newly returned enchanted blade, Tobimun. I believe that's how you pronounce that. The fight, however, and unfortunately, is not over. You see, one of the most important aspects within Kagurabachi is the perception of the legendary swordbearers within the story. To the majority, they are perceived to be incredible warriors that saved Japan during a vicious war. But as our protagonists continually come across the power these warriors held, notably in the battle against Kyoto when a fraction of Magatsumi's might was on full display, Chihiro, remembering that horror as well as the second presence that was inside Kyoto, wondered aloud whether these swordbearers were actually so-called heroes. In that moment of contemplation, Hirohiko worms his way into Chihiro's head and twists his thoughts about the swordbearers. Specifically, Samura, because he reveals that Samura actually made a deal with the Hishaku to defeat what he believes to be the most prominent evil of all, one that dwarfs even the Hishaku themselves, that being the swordbearers. In his eyes, they had committed unspeakable crimes in order to bring about the end of the Seate War, that were later covered up to make them look like the good guys. But now that innocent people were dying, all to protect the lives of the wielders, Samura became resolute in his mission to kill all 5 remaining blade wielders, including himself. Starting with Yoji. Yoji is taken aback by Samura's words, but he's not totally without a lack of understanding. As a result, he refused to simply die without putting up a fight for those who had sacrificed their lives to get him this far. Thus, the 2 swordbearers stood at the ready, once master and student, once comrades on the battlefield. Now, they wielded blades intended to end the other's life. In one quick motion, the 2 sped toward each other, and Samura lands a devastating blow on Yoji, leaving him down for the count, before following it up with one more to end it all. This reveal at the time was probably the most shocking thing to ever happen in the series, not only due to how welcome Samura and Yoji were with the main cast, as well as the readers, but also because the idea of someone like him being able to easily end the life of Yoji, a person he was tangibly connected to, just seemed impossible. But the fact of the matter is, he did it, and he also told Chihiro that if our protagonist were to ever use his enchanted blade again, Samura wouldn't hesitate to end his life all the same. Now, from everything that I've laid out here, you would not be wrong for thinking that this character was some twisted dude with a screwed up moral compass, obsessed with the crimes of the past and unwilling to move forward. However, Samura as a character is actually way more complex than that, and only recently have we begun to get the full scope of how he came to this point in the story. With that said, that leads us to chapter 72 of the manga. In the prior chapters leading up to this one, it was revealed that Samura had a daughter, and that his wife had unfortunately passed away due to an illness, making him the sole parental figure. Which, by the way, those events unfold in chapter 71, and that chapter is hands down one of the best in the entire manga. But in the subsequent chapter, we finally learn the truth about the Seate War. And I know this video is already filled to the brim with spoilers, but this reveal is so massive that I give pause and urge you to go experience this info dump for yourselves, because it is insane. For those who have stayed though, in chapter 72, we're previewed to a flashback. In said flashback, we see the leader of the Hishaku, Yura, come into contact with Samura about a potential calamity that may impact the future. During their conversation, Yura recounted the public notion that the Seate War was fought against bloodthirsty savages that needed to be eradicated for the sake of the nation's safety, before revealing he knew the truth. After the 6 enchanted blade wielders pushed back the invaders and advanced onto the islanders disposed of their royal family and surrendered before more lives could be lost, signing a peace treaty. Despite that action, the wielder of Magatsumi had gone insane over the course of the war and desired the annihilation of the islanders regardless. So, on one fateful day, he accessed the True Realm, which is like essentially the Bankai for this universe, and utilizing the technique Malediction, he killed over 200,000 islanders. Only afterwards were the 5 other sword wielders able to stop him, and Japan resorted to a highly negative portrayal of the islanders and praising the heroes in order to maintain security. In chapter 73, the incident is also referred to as an ethnic cleansing. So yeah, Kagurabachi, in my opinion, is very clearly one of the best new gen out right now, and I encourage everyone that hasn't given it a chance to do so. With all that said though, thank you all very much for watching. I hope that you all enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe with the notifications on, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody!